We're at the Lodge in Round Rock, Texas, playing 1-2 PLO with a $5 bring-in on a Thursday. In this hand, under the gun is straddled to 10, and there's one caller to us. We're on the cutoff holding 10-9, 8-7, suited in spades to our 10, and we make the call. The button raises it up to 50. The small blind calls, the straddler folds, under the gun plus one calls, and we call, and we go four ways to a flop, which comes King 10-10 with two diamonds. It's check to us, and we check, giving the button raiser some rope, but he doesn't take the bait, and he checks it back. The turn falls the 7 of clubs. It's check to us again, and now we've made a full house. Still, I don't think I can get much value from my opponents here, and I tried to give the button some rope again. This time he takes it, betting a measly $30 into a pot of over 200. The small blind makes the call, and we opt to just call as well. The river falls the queen of spades, the small blind checks. We check, and the button checks it back. The button announces he has a straight. I announce a full house expecting to win, and the small blind announces he has a full house and his is better. He turns over King 7-2. Somehow we managed to lose the bare minimum in this spot. The small blind could have easily gotten more money out of us if he had bet at any point. It's a $15 double board bomb pot six-handed, and we're in the hijack holding King Jack 7-4 suited in hearts to our king. The first board comes King 8-6 rainbow, and the second board is King Queen 6 with two hearts. We flop top pair on both boards, and on the top board we have a gut shot straight draw. On the bottom board we have the second nut flush draw. We all check it over to the cutoff, who bets 50. The big blind calls, and we call as well. The turns fall the 10 of spades and the 5 of hearts. Now we've turned a double gutter on the top board, needing a 9 or a 5 to make the straight, and we've made the second nut flush on the second board. My opponent in the cutoff is fairly aggressive, so I check it over to allow him to bet, and he doesn't disappoint, putting out $150. The big blind folds, and we make the call. The river comes the 9 of clubs and the 9 of spades. We've got the second nuts on both boards now. Our opponent will need the nut flush and queen jack to have us beat both ways, so I lead for the full pot of $540. Eventually, he puts in the call. I forgot to record his exact hand, but he winds up showing down a smaller flush in two pair, giving me the scoop.
Wow, you gave him a 9. How much was it?
$540.
540. That was the only card I could save.
Thank you.
It's another $15 double board bomb pot. We're in the hijack holding ace 6-6-5, suited in diamonds to our ace. The flop comes down 5-5-4 with two hearts and ace queen 3 rainbow. When it checks to us, we have trips with an ace kicker, and then top pair plus some backdoor draws on the second board, and we bet out 25. 3 players call. The turns come the 5 of clubs and the jack of clubs, and when it checks to us, we've turned quads. And we want to continue building the pot, so I put out a bet of $125. Unfortunately, we don't get any takers, but we also don't have to share, and we do scoop the whole thing. I suppose I should have bet between 50 to 100 in this spot to hopefully keep my opponents locked in, creating a larger pot that I could bet or raise on the river without any fear. We wind up booking a profit of $815 on this session, and now off to our Friday session. We're under the gun with 9-8-6-5 suited in diamonds to our 8. We bring in for 5. A new player at the table in the cutoff makes it 20. I'm generally suspicious of the player who's just sat down and is immediately raising their first hand. Either they have a monster, or they're just a hyper-aggro player that's trying to assert dominance. Given our opponent is in the cutoff, I'm going to assume the latter. In addition, even if he does have a premium, our hand has decent equity against those types of hands. The small blind calls 20, and we do as well. We go 3 ways to a flop, which comes 8-7-2 rainbow. We flopped a nice little wrap straight draw. Any 10, 9, 6, 5, or 4 will give us the straight, although not all of these will give us the nut straight. In addition, we've also flopped a pair and backdoor diamonds, so even if our opponent has pocket aces here, we have a ton of equity. Still, this flop favors my range more than the pre-flop raisers, so when the small blind checks, we bet the full pot of 65. The pre-flop raiser calls, and now the small blind shoves all in for 230. We repot to isolate with some dead money in there. The original raiser gets out of the way, and the small blind only wants to run it once. The turn comes the jack of hearts, the river the ace of diamonds, and we completely whiff our draws and we're left with a single pair. Our opponent shows down 10-9-4-3 double suited. Looking at the equities when the money went in, we were a solid 63% to our opponent's 34%, while there was some tie equity as well. We're in middle position holding ace-8, 7-2, suited in clubs to our ace. This is a fairly marginal holding. The connectivity is nice between the 7 and 8, but they lack backup to flop wraps. Ace-2 can make a straight, but it'll never be the nut straight, and so we're left with just the strengths of the suited ace. Under the gun +1 calls 5, we call in early position. The cutoff min raises to 10, the button makes it 50, the small blind calls, the big blind calls, we call, and the min raiser calls. We're going 6 ways to a flop, which comes 8-5-2 with 2 hearts. It checks around to us. We flop top and bottom pair plus backdoor straight and flush draws. We don't block the heart draw, which is a concern, but overall this board texture shouldn't favor the raiser's range. Given the size of the pot and our remaining stack size, we decide to go with it, betting the full pot of 305. The small blind winds up shoving all in for 410 total, and we only have to call another 105, and we do so. We do agree to run it twice. The first board comes out the 3 of hearts and the ace of spades. The second board, the 10 of hearts and the queen of diamonds, and he shows down king 10, 9-6, suited in hearts to his 9. So he called a pre-flop raise with this garbage out of position, and then he calls off his stack with a gut shot straight draw and a 9-high flush draw. Although equity-wise he wasn't too big of an underdog, roughly 47 to my 53%, I could and will usually have a bigger flush draw most of the time here, putting him in rough shape. But unfortunately we lose this coin flip twice, and the session is not going great. It's a $15 double board bomb pot. We're in the big blind and dealt the Jack-Jack, 4-3, double suited in spades and diamonds. The first flop comes down queen of diamonds, jack of clubs, 4 of hearts. The second flop is 7-7-5 with 2 spades. It's checked to middle position who bets 25, and there's a raise to 75 by the hijack. The cutoff calls, we call, and middle position calls. We're going 4 ways to a turn, which comes the 3 of hearts and the 2 of spades. When it checks to us, we have middle set on the top board, and we've turned a flush on the second board. I expect I'm ahead on the board where I have the set of jacks, but I don't want anyone to river a straight or backdoor flush on me. On the board that's paired 7s, we can put a lot of pressure on flushes that are ahead of us, and 7s that aren't full yet, and deny them their equity. So we opt to bet the full pot of 435, committing ourselves to the hand. The hijack shoves all in for 600, and we make the call. My opponent begins shouting 10! And then immediately the first board falls the 10 of spades. The river on the second board is the 8 of diamonds, and he shows down king 9, 7-2, giving him a straight and a full house to scoop us. Looking at the equities on the turn, the board he hit the gut shot on, we were 90% equity, and the board he turned a full house on, we only had 5% equity. So generally in this spot, we're both going to just chop it up. But unfortunately, that isn't the case this time, and we continue to bleed chips. It's been straddled to 20. We're in the cutoff holding ace-king, jack-8, suited in clubs to our ace. When it folds to us, I'm done playing around, and I announce pot, making it 75 to go. Both straddlers call. The flop falls down king, jack, 7 with 2 hearts. They check to me, and given my stack size and the pot size, I should be betting here. Yes, I don't block the flush draw, but I do block some of the straight draws, and I have top 2 pair, and there aren't a ton of turns that will be good for me. But for whatever reason, in the moment, perhaps because I've been getting my teeth kicked in all session, I check it back. The turn is the 9 of clubs, they check to me, and again I check it back. The river falls the 4 of diamonds, it's checked around, and our 2 pair is good. We're in middle position holding ace-ace, queen-4, double suited in clubs and hearts. Under the gun calls 5, we call 5. An aggressive Asian in the hijack raises it to 20. The cutoff calls 20. Another aggressive Asian in the small blind raises it to 80. The big blind calls 80, and under the gun calls 80. We drop the hammer, potting it to 440. Now the guy who made it 20 repots, and the guy who re-raised to 80 gets his stack all in. We've got double suited aces against 2 aggressive Asians, every poker player's dream.
Looks like we made it. Left each other on the way to another love.
The guy who started all this with the raise to 20 only runs once. The player under the gun says he folded ace-queen, jack-9 suited in diamonds and spades. The board runs out jack-10-7 on the flop with 2 diamonds. The turn is an 8 of spades, and the river the 3 of hearts. The original raiser shows down ace, king, 9-8, double suited for a flop straight. Unfortunately, this caps off a horrendous session that sees us taking a loss of $2,500, and now I have to sell one of my cats.
What is this feeling that's caused them all to laugh? A red line burning down the side of your graph. You feel like you just got robbed. You should have never quit your job. And your lips are trembling, but you can't speak. You're trying, oh, you're trying not to cry. You just got stacked on the felt, my friend. You just got stacked. Yes, it really just happened. Now all your money's gone. Where did everything go so wrong? And you wind up broke. Everyone's laughing and you're the joke. Oh, that hand was whack. The way you just got stacked.
It's a king!
That's real! He had 3 out of 4! He had 3 out of 4!
That's
with the worst hand! Why is everyone so happy except Phil?
So that was a painful one to share. All the big pots, I just got crushed. And, you know, I was always under the impression that pre-flop, when you get stacks in, the best you could really be is 65-35. But in this situation where my opponent had the ace, king, 9-8 double suited, I was actually 68% equity, which really surprised me. I'd never seen pre-flop equities, you know, higher than 65. So that was an interesting spot. What's funny is my opponent, when he raises and he's facing a re-raise from a guy in the blinds, and then my limp repot, at a minimum, he should really be concerned that he's facing aces. The opponent in the blinds could have the kings there. And so his hand is really going to shrink up in value, unfortunately, or, well, fortunately, you know, he was trying to give me the money. He was trying to put the money in. He put it in bad. And that's really all you can hope for in this game. And unfortunately, sometimes bad plays are going to get rewarded. His did. He won the big pot. I got crushed that entire session. And that's the way it goes sometimes. And it can be a tough nut to crack with the variance in this game. But speaking of equities, viewer Ligaf the Indifferent noticed something in my previous video, an error I made where I had a hand where I had flopped top pair, the second nut flush draw, and an open-ended straight draw. And I had misquoted the equities. I put the equities from pre-flop, 53-47, as the equities on the flop. My opponent had flopped the nut flush draw, and they also had middle set of tens. And so they were actually an overwhelming favorite against me there. Petting my cats. They're not really showing up on camera here, but 2 of them are here giving me attention. But anyway, he was an overwhelming favorite, 80% equity in that spot against me. And so, you know, it was a flop that looked really favorable for me, and unfortunately my opponent just had the monster hand that had me coolered. So that's going to be a wrap for this episode. I appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, leave any comments or questions you may have down below. I'm always happy to respond, and we'll see you in the next one.
You know, after watching a video like this, sometimes I'll like it, sometimes I'll leave a comment, and sometimes I'll subscribe. Sometimes I'll even do all 3.